there is definitely going to be a newer generation of property management companies coming up that are built with all these tools from day one. Just like I view my company, RL Property Management, as being early on to be the sort of web first, digital first, paperless. Remember that when that was all the rave?
Yeah.
Um, Type of property management business in my area. And at the time, that was a huge competitive advantage because it allowed us to be fast and nimble and cheaper and just more tech forward than our competitors in the local marketplace here. And so I definitely think today, right now, probably in your market, there's probably one or two little groups of people that are doing the equivalent of that right now, but with AI.
Hello, professional property managers. Andrew Smallwood here, Triple Win Podcast. I'm joined today with Peter Lohmann. Many of you know Peter as owner of RL Property Management. Many of you know Peter because of his newsletter that he sends out, which I think just passed 20,000 readers, which is really exciting.
Yep.
Some of you were following Peter on Twitter, and now you're following him on LinkedIn or Facebook, and you're seeing the meme game really flourish recently. And some of you, there's probably at least a couple hundred people out there who know Peter, as one of the leaders and founders of Crane with Wolfgang, and yeah, so there's a lot of ways you could know Peter Lohmann. Peter, did I miss? You've
No,
always got some other exciting projects going on. Did I miss? Did I miss anything?
that was a great overview. Thank you for having me. I've been on the show once or twice before. Always have a great time. It's awesome to be back in conversation with you.
I saw our friend Dr. Ben Hardy put out a new book recently, so we may be reaching out. Peter
Oh,
interviewed Ben,
yeah.
interviewed Ben previously for one of our Triple Win leadership exchanges, and did a fantastic job. So we may be following up against it. I'm sure this will not be your last time, Peter, that we're doing this.
Great.
Okay, well, thanks for joining. I'd love to even just start, Peter, with what's on your mind? Like, what are some of the things that you're noticing are happening in the property management industry right now that have your attention, and for other property management business leaders, you think are worthy of their attention? I want to start a little broad before we get in.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. So, a couple things came up for me right away that I've been thinking a lot about, and we can dive deeper into any of these or skip them. But the first one that really came up for me is Zillow. Zillow is where we get pretty much, I don't want to say all, but the vast majority of our renter leads that turn into leases. And they've kind of quietly run away with that market. They've done a bunch of acquisitions and really worked on their product, which frankly is excellent for the renter side, such that that's just where people go to look for rental homes and apartments these days. And so there's a lot of implications of that I've been thinking about and worrying about actually
Hmm.
recently. So I've been thinking and talking a little bit about that. And I'll give you a couple more and we can go talk about whichever one you want. I've been thinking a lot about outbound. So RL Property Management, we get hundreds and hundreds of leads a year, and we're in a growth mode, so we're looking to continue to increase our lead flow. And we've been trying to do outbound. So we experimented with cold calls and cold emails and different components of an outbound campaign. We made hires specific to, cold callers, appointment setters, and it just hasn't worked for us. And so I've got some thoughts there, which we could talk about. And then, I continue to think a lot about AI and the implications for our industry, the implications for our software partners and vendors that we love, the implications for the competitive advantage that we have or don't have in the marketplace relative to our other local property managers and the national players as well. So that's kind of where my mind has been when I'm not creating property management memes.
Which we'll definitely get into that.
Which there's not a lot of time left over by the time I make all those memes. So
Yes, the meme game is strong. Um, let's start with Zillow. And off the bat, this sounds like kind of a what I'm hearing is really thinking about um, the strategy of where things are playing, what's moving, et cetera, and what are the implications if ultimately there's a player like Zillow who's aggregating demand at the top of the funnel. Um,
Yes.
what kind of how does the leverage and the power dynamics of that change over time? What implications might that have for property managers? I'm curious what your thoughts are on that.
To me, it's scary because they're so dominant right now that to not list with Zillow in most marketplaces, there's a couple exceptions here and there, but in 98% of metro areas in the US, if you were to not list with Zillow, not syndicate to Zillow and their platforms, they own a bunch of other platforms as well, you would be missing well over half of the potential owner leads. And I would argue that you would be violating your fiduciary duty to your property owner by not doing that because you would essentially be lengthening the time of their vacancy unnecessarily. And so, because they're so dominant, and because they control the source of our demand for our product. So we have a supply of rental homes and apartments, and there's another side of that marketplace, which is the demand. It's a marketplace. So there's actually two marketplaces in our world. There's the marketplace of owners selecting property management companies. So there's a demand
Yep.
of rental owners and a supply of property management companies. And then there's the demand for rental homes and the supply of rental homes. So the the fact that a single entity or player in the marketplace has aggregated the demand of those renter eyeballs and controls them puts us at a severe disadvantage. And so if Zillow basically says jump and we have to say how high. So if they were to say, they could do a lot of scary things. They could mandate us to use their standard rental application. Because famously, Zillow is very consumer friendly. The consumer is their North Star. That's like their mission statement. And so if they were to decide like, hey, it's best for consumers if they have a single rental application and we're going to require anyone who lists on our platform to use that, we're now doing that. And that's
Yep.
not great. They could do things like say that you're not allowed to use credit score when screening tenants because it's been shown to disproportionately affect minorities or other groups. Now we just have to do that. We don't have a choice. And so there's a lot, and that's just the tip of the iceberg of how they could exert control. And we haven't even gotten to the fact that they could just charge whatever they want, essentially. So it's scary. And I actually had a really interesting conversation this morning with a pretty high up friendly face at apartments.com, which is owned by CoStar. They also own homes.com and a couple other
Hmm.
platforms. And they are making a hard push into SFR and small multifamily with a competitive product to Zillow. And I could not be more thrilled because the enemy of my enemy is my friend, right? And they hate Zillow too. It's like, great. So we're going to try and bring some balance to the force. I'm probably going to start paying them and using them and promoting them because what we really want is those two duking it out and competing for our business and competing for renter eyeballs. That's the best solution for us as property managers if we're not going to own and control our own rental listing platform, which it was before my time, but I heard that NARPM did that or tried to do that many years ago and it just didn't take. So,
Yeah. It's always challenging to get enough volume on the consumer side where like starting that and getting that. It's easy to see why people would be pessimistic about once Zillow's really, run away with it. Like, how easy is it for someone to enter the market and start to really compete there until they're over monetizing or doing something that would
yeah,
create some kind of opportunity for somebody else? It would feel almost like their opportunity to lose, similar to how Google ran away with search, right?
exactly.
And so, a question I have for you is, as you think about that, the conversation in Zillow and real estate has always been on the sales side, right? And for
Hmm.
sales agents. And I think there's a lot of people who predicted by this time that Zillow would be putting real estate, agents out of business, right, so to speak. And it hasn't played out exactly that way. It sounds like you're less concerned that Zillow would kind of come down, into property management, but maybe in this like screening and up space, they could exert such control and leverage that could make things painful and difficult. Is that
Exactly.
summarizing your position?
Yeah, they're never going to manage the property. What they're going to do is extract all the value by controlling the top of the funnel.
Yeah.
And they're going to control the tenant screening, they're going to control the rental listings, they're going to control the application and perhaps all the way up to as far as the lease and the security deposit. That's what Airbnb does, by the way.
Hmm.
Exact same thing, just short-term rentals. And that's where they're going to stop. That's where Airbnb stopped. You're still going to be responsible for the hard, low margin part, which is physically maintaining the property, taking the tenant phone calls, and all the nitty gritty uh, tenants, termites, and trouble of property management. But they're going to be getting rich off of the lead flow and like the software, fun, easy part,
Yeah.
leaving us with just the worst of the worst parts of it. They're going to suck all the marrow right out of property management and keep that for themselves.
Mm. One question I'm curious about, and this kind of maybe dovetails into AI, but do you see an opportunity for how consumers are searching and maybe engaging for homes changing from the kind of like UI and UX that Zillow's providing to something different that could be disruptive there? Or do you see like, hey, in this context, this use case, like that's less likely to happen, or Zillow seems to already be testing that and kind of, I'm just curious how you see that.
Yeah, I mean, Zillow has announced some partnerships with some of these AI groups. I can't remember the
Mhm.
details, but basically they want their listings to appear in AI search results up to date, like up to the minute. That makes sense. I think for now, my guess is vast majority of consumers are still searching traditionally by just looking up homes for rent near me in Google or probably one of Zillow's, their marquee platform or some of the other platforms they own. It's hard to see that changing too much too soon because when you are dealing with such a large purchase like a rental home that with a lease that you're going to sign for a year, it's kind of like buying a car. Like you really want to know the details and specifics from the first party source rather than just relying on some AI translated, you know, other third party website. So I think I don't know, like there certainly was a huge shift from like desktop to mobile. That was a big
Hmm.
change in how people searched. And I guess I could easily see an AI shift. I don't know though. Like I'm getting old enough now. I just turned 40 that I don't feel as connected to the younger generation and what they're thinking about and how they're using technology. I used to feel
Hmm.
very connected to that and I don't anymore. So I don't know that I have good thoughts there. We probably need to bring on like a Gen Z guest and see how they found their last apartment. Or
Well, I'm probably with you that like in the weeks and months ahead, things are largely going to resemble what they are today,
yeah,
right? And I think that's probably true. You know, the thing that's interesting to me is thinking about maybe it's less that, okay, would I be typing this into ChatGPT? It's like as you start to get agents doing more and more things, like you could see people who are using those types of LLM tools on a daily basis. If there's an agent that's going out and aggregating search, et cetera, from
yeah,
different places and pulling that back and linking them appropriately based on your preferences, and your LLM's got that memory and it really knows you and what your preferences are. Um,
yeah.
I wonder if you could see something, over the mid or longer term that moves things there. On this AI side, Peter, like what are the things that you think are most interesting and some of the implications for property managers that are a little more practical and like a little bit more right in front of us?
Yeah, I got to say first, if you're feeling kind of guilty about not keeping up with AI or trying AI tools or integrating AI into your business, you're not alone. I feel that way too. And everyone I talk to feels that way. It's changing so fast. And at least for me, my business is at the size where I'm kind of like in a if it ain't broke, don't fix it mindset
Mhm.
for a lot of the business, which was not true 5 years ago. So it's been harder for me to really speak about the practical realities of AI, because in order to truly have expert commentary on that, I would have to be kind of ripping and replacing chunks of my business with these newer, relatively untested products. And I'm wary to do that, both because it's very disruptive for the team, and also
Mm,
because, like I said, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But there is definitely going to be a newer generation of property management companies coming up that are built with all these tools from day one. Just like I sort of picture, I view my company, RL Property Management, as being early on to be the sort of web first, digital first, paperless. Remember that when that was all the rave?
yeah.
Um, Type of property management business in my area. Like when I founded
Mhm.
RL Property Management in 2013, we were using Buildium, and that was like kind of new and hot. And we had an owner portal. That was crazy. Everything was online. We had no paper in our office. We were scanning stuff when it came in. We had online rent payments. That was like blowing people's minds. We had all these we had a Dropbox with all of our stuff in it instead of like file cabinets. And at the time, that was a huge competitive advantage because it allowed us to be fast and nimble and cheaper and just more tech forward than our competitors in the local marketplace here. And so I definitely think today, right now, probably in your market, there's probably one or two little groups of people that are doing the equivalent of that right now, but with AI. And so
Mm.
that's going to look like some combination of AI first vendors and products. Rent Engine comes to mind just off the top of my head. And it's also going to look like their homebrew solutions built with AI agents and tools like N8N and ChatGPT and all these other crazy. I mean, even like in Crane, Wolf is using lots of vibe coding tools to build out a whole member facing piece of software that
Mm.
delivers little pieces and parts of functionality that aren't built into our community platform. So, in a similar way, I could see a younger, more tech forward property manager today building something similar, basically their own owner portal using
Mm.
AI, filling in the bits and pieces and parts that the property management software does not on the owner portal.
Mm.
I would absolutely be doing that if I was 10 years younger today. That would be like what I was doing all day, every day. It would be so fun. And so my vantage point, I think, is probably typical for a lot of listeners, but it's not the only way to think about what's happening with AI right now.
Mm. Yeah, it's easy to feel as a property manager with what's happened in rates, inflation, competition, AI. Like there's a lot of change
Yeah.
happening on like some different vectors in a moment like this, and um, and it can feel overwhelming and it can feel difficult to keep up or feel like you're keeping up. Um, and when the rate of change is faster outside your business versus inside your business, that can be a challenging place to be. And one of the interesting things is like I see being in the Crane group, I noticed that these are people who are engaging with each other and sharing, and like you see some of the experimentation of your peers in a more visible way than you would elsewhere. And it just reminds me like how important having the peer group around
Yeah.
you is, and how influential that's going to be in like recognizing opportunities, getting what signal through a lot of the noise, and being able to really focus. So I'm curious, like for your business right now, like what are the things that RL is like very focused on right now that you feel are making an impact, or what are the things you're seeing in the Crane group that you feel like people are focused on and it's having a big impact right now?
AI wise or just in general?
I would say in general.
Okay. So at RL Property Management, we have been laser focused on churn for honestly several years. And we finally cracked it. As of the last 6 months or so, our churn is half what it was at the peak, less than half. And our owners are sticking around. We've got about 720 doors, and we are only losing 2 to 4 clients a month, which is about 1% churn when you look at our overall client. We have about 350 clients or so. And so that works out to about 12% annual churn on clients, a little bit higher on units, and really happy with that. So that's been my focus, and the team's focus, and they've really executed well. What else am I thinking a lot about right now?
Can I ask more about that,
Yeah,
Peter? Because I think churn is on a lot of people's minds, and 12% churn, I think most would say as a benchmark, right? Like that's above average, right, in the industry. And you mentioned like before, it sounded like it was in the 20s, and like you guys have worked at this. Like I feel like when I hear property managers talk about churn, there's so many like ways at coming at that, like looking at what's the experience we're delivering? Is our pricing right? What about like how specific we're being about the customers that we're bringing in? How are we looking at the talent on our team? And obviously, how well are they executing against the processes that we have in place? I mean, there's a lot of ways to come
yeah.
at that. And so I'm just curious, like, how did you guys get focused on identifying like what are the things that are going to have a big impact and ultimately what you put into place to drive that down?
Oh, I tried so many things, Andrew. I really was banging my head against the wall for, like I said, years. I mean, let me just run you through some of the things I tried and did. First thing I did was I went and looked at our reviews. Now, of course, you can go on Google. It's kind of a mess on there. I had much better success. So we, for years, we've been surveying our owners and our tenants using an NPS survey, Net Promoter Score. We use a piece of software called Retently, but there's a million of them. It really doesn't matter which one you use. And so once every 3 or 4 months, an email would go out to all of our owners asking them, how likely are you to rate RL Property Management? How likely are you to refer RL Property Management to a friend or colleague on a score through 1 through 10? And whatever the score they gave, they would be given the opportunity to leave a comment. Nice thing about this, by the way, is it heads off a lot of your bad Google reviews, because when people feel like they've been heard, they're less likely to go to a public place. So what I did was, when I first started looking at this churn problem, I got a data dump of all of the negative client NPS scores. So basically 1 through 7. Anyone who scored 1 through 7, I grabbed all of their comments and I fed it into like a word cloud analysis tool. This was like pre AI. This was like 2 years ago, before I was really using ChatGPT. And it showed me a word cloud of like, what are the most common words that people use when leaving a negative comment about their experience with my company? And the biggest word was maintenance. And so when I dug into it, I found out that a lot of people were complaining about turn costs and maintenance costs. So that kicked off a huge effort at our company to figure out what's going on with our turn costs and our maintenance costs and try and get those more under control, or loop owners into what was happening at the property earlier so that they weren't surprised, even if they did have to spend a bunch of money. So that was the first thing that we did. Then another thing that we noticed from those survey responses was people were talking about like the length of the turn and the overall length of how long the property was vacant. A lot of times the owner would say something like, my property was vacant for 4 months, or stuff like that. And so we then tried to figure out how to measure our days vacant, like from keys to keys, right? From the moment the tenant turns in the keys till the new tenant moves in. What goes into that period of time, and how can we optimize it? So we kicked off a huge project to speed up our turns and a separate huge project to speed up our leasing. So that was a huge undertaking. The next thing I did was I pulled some data on the owners that were actually churning, and I tried to segment this data. I tried to segment it in a couple different ways. I looked at, are these homeowners what we call accidental landlords or homeowners that are churning? And the way I defined that was, have they ever lived in the property before? That's how I would define that. And then I looked at investors, intentional investors. So those two segments. Are homeowner accidental landlords churning at a higher rate relative to their base percentage of our overall clients? Are they churning at a higher rate compared to investors? And the answer was they were. We learned that accidental landlords, at least for our company, were churning at like double the rate of investor clients. So we took that and did a bunch of stuff to try and screen out ones that we would be more likely to churn. And we also we kicked off a huge education project to try and sort of turn these accidental landlords more into investors and help them think about the property, more like an investor. So that was one way we segmented the churn data. We also segmented it by property type. Do single family owners churn more than duplex owners? Do multi-unit owners, like an owner who owns 5 single family homes, is he more likely to churn than someone who owns a 5-unit apartment building? I was trying to figure out, is there a specific property type or client type that we're not doing a good job for? And one thing that came out of that is a property that has an interior hallway was highly likely to churn very quickly. For some reason, we were just not doing a good job with those properties. And if you think about it, a property with an interior hallway presents a bunch of unique challenges. You can't really do self-showing because there's exterior access problems. The landscaping becomes more important at a property like that to like the perception of it. You've got that common space, the common hallway and steps and everything. Who's making sure the light works? Who's making sure it's not dirty? Who's making sure there's not a homeless guy hanging out there? How do the vendors get in to the common hallway to access the unit? So there's all these complications that come up when you have this interior access hallway. So we had to do some soul searching and figure out okay, do we just not want to manage these anymore? Or do we want to figure out how to manage them really well? So that was a whole other big thing. So, and then I did a huge webinar more recently on the $300 pre-inspections that we do. And that has to do with top of funnel screening out bad fit clients before they ever signed on, which is kind of a backdoor way of improving your churn, but a great way. And so that's some of what we attacked over that honestly, I just described like 2 to 3 years of work.
Yeah. I'm sure people could hear any one of those things and be like, okay, that's my rock for this quarter, right? You start stringing this together, and then, but putting those things together, that's how you get from mid-20s to churn down to 12%. And it seems like your team's now got this real discipline and programmatic approach in place, probably of looking at what our survey results say, what's our next opportunity, and you've got a nice muscle built there, which is really great.
The big challenge with that, though, is everything I just described, none of the data for any of that analysis was available through our property management software. Not the surveys, not the churn segmentation, not the owner type. So it was very, very manual and pretty painful because I'm decent with Excel, but there's some serious data analysis in some of those pieces and parts. So that was hard. And one thing I didn't mention, which was another big project of ours, was just turning our company into a more customer service oriented type of a business. The way our company was built originally, it was founded by myself and another engineer, 2 engineers. We built everything for the convenience of us, the business and the employees, for maximum efficiency and maximum sort of rational, logical structure. And what I have now learned is that you need to give equal weight to the customer's experience of working with you. You can't just build your business for the convenience of the team and the owners. There has to be serious weight given to what's it actually like to be a customer of ours? How easy is it? How fun is it? How does it make me feel? Do I feel like this company actually cares about me as a person? Yes, they technically got the turn done quickly. And yes, they were technically right about this clause in the management agreement that I didn't read. But how did I feel after those interactions? That part of it was missing from my brain. And so when I brought in my VP of Ops, who had that part of his brain, he really has helped. And actually my COO, Kathy, before him, both really helped build up that cultural piece and part of our organization, which is now very strong and comes through when owners speak with anyone on our team. And I love that for the owners and for the team, because it actually is a more enjoyable experience to work at a company that is thinking this way.
Mm. I think what you said is so important because a lot of the conversations I'm having, Peter, with property managers right now are actually like about this topic. And it's really like there's this problem of everything's been kind of an efficiency trap. And like, how do we get incrementally a little bit faster, better, cheaper at doing the things that we've always been doing? But if we're still missing customer expectations, we're like, we're kind of like optimizing for the wrong thing,
Yeah.
right? A more efficient way of missing customer expectations versus, hey, what is the experience? Starting with the customer experience. There's that famous Steve Jobs clip that floats around every now and again, right? Of like starting with the customer experience
Yes.
and then working back from that. Which obviously ideas like that hold a warm place in second nature's heart to
Definitely.
think about the world this way. But I really appreciate you sharing that. And a lot of property managers are thinking about that right now. I want to segue a bit here, Peter, because I think like when we talk about thinking differently, like thinking from an experience versus like an operations centric, right? Like or first kind of mindset, like we were just talking about, or keeping up with AI, everything else, like who you're around and who you're talking to, and where you're getting your information, like all these things are really important. And, I'm curious to ask you a little bit more. Like you're going to be speaking at the Property Maintenance Summit, right? That's coming up. And you were just talking about like maintenance and the importance of that in churn. And like, I think about people hearing from you and what you'll share there. I know at Future, you're going to be talking about how you take a month off
Hmm.
from your property management business every year. And like, what I'm starting to see now, like more and more property managers taking 2 weeks off, 3 weeks off, like
Hmm.
following this and really creating freedom in their business in a way that a lot of them weren't before. And like, it's a lot easier to do that when you're around dozens of other people who are doing that same thing. And I'm just curious if you can kind of speak to a little bit of the like genesis of Crane and like why a peer network like this really helps and how you should think about like picking the right peer network for you. That there's other groups and communities out there, but I'd love for you to kind of get us started there.
Yeah, absolutely. So, when I got started in property management, it was 2013, and I didn't know anything. I had no experience in property management at all. I never worked at a real estate company. My family didn't own real estate. So I was grasping around in the dark for anything that would help me figure out how to start and run a property management company. And man, there was not a lot out there. There was a couple people were circulating PDFs, literally, of like presentations given at conferences and stuff, like how to manage from a palm tree. There was a couple of these things circulating around. There was Robert Locke was putting out content about property management's a nickel and dime business. Here's how you actually make money. I learned a lot from those guys and credit them with some of the early genesis of RL property management and helping us actually be profitable. Um, I didn't really discover NARPM until 2015, 2016 ish. And immediately, once I went to my first conference, I was fully bought in. And anyone who remembers going to their first NARPM conference will relate to this experience of like, oh, I'm in the right place now. This is proper. This is my people. They get me. I get them, and we are sharing ideas and information and leveling up, and just it's like you finally stuck your head above water and you're like, oh wow, there's a bunch of people doing this. I don't have to reinvent the wheel. That experience was so profound for me. And if you're listening to this and you're not a member of NARPM, you should join NARPM. And so I never really forgot that. And fast forward years and years, when I got to talking with Wolfgang Krosky, the co-founder of Crane, we got to wondering like, hey, is there an opportunity to take some of that magic and create a version of it that is one sort of online digital native not exclusively, but a key part of the experience. And two, build it specifically for experienced property managers who have gotten some initial traction, but they want to take things to the next level. And that was kind of the genesis of it. Is we both at this point had a little bit of success and a little bit started to build a little bit of influence, and we thought, wouldn't it be awesome if we could really bring together the best and the brightest and all level up together. And so that turned into what became Crane, a paid private community with online and offline component. And our mission at Crane is to deliver time freedom. There are so many great vendor partners who can help you make your business more profitable, either directly with companies like Profit Coach or indirectly with, I mean, Second Nature is a great example, finding revenue or cutting costs by being more efficient. And there's a ton of great solutions in our space for companies who need to grow. Companies like RentScale and others who will help you with your sales and marketing. Crane is unique in that our mission is not to help you be more profitable and not necessarily to help you grow, although there's a lot of discussion that happens around those things. But our mission is to deliver time freedom. And that shows up in the form of these 1 week, 2 week, 4 week long Crane breaks, is what we call them, where you fully disconnect from your business. The reason we made that our mission is because when I started taking serious time away from my business 4 years ago, I took my first full month off. It was transformative, and I realized this is something that every property manager needs to get to experience. And they can, and we will provide the resources and the mindset and the peer group to unlock that for everybody. And we have a process where you start with 1 week if you've never done it before, and there's every time someone comes back from a Crane break, they kind of report in on, here's how it went, here's what happened, here's what I did, here's what my team did. And universally, people come back re-energized, excited about their company again, amazed at how their team stepped up and how little they were actually needed in the day-to-day, and with ideas of how they can make it even better next time. And I got to say, it's been the most rewarding part of my professional career to date, has been watching people take time away from their company who had never done it before and have it be very positive for them. It's just, I love it. It's so awesome to be able to see people experience that for the first time.
Mm. Mhm. Yeah, I'd love to. This isn't a plug. It's like the opposite of a plug. I would just want to reinforce your conversation about if people haven't experienced NARPM and they're listening to this.
Yeah.
Second Nature has such high conviction in what we've seen NARPM do for so many people in the property management industry that right now, if you're listening to this and it's before mid-October, we've got a few spots left where we'll actually sponsor your ticket and travel to get to the NARPM National Convention in Orlando coming up in a couple weeks. So if you're catching this hot off the press,
Yeah.
you may be able to sneak in or keep an eye out. And
I
the
run
chance
into
to like,
people. I run into people who've taken advantage of this offer in the past at the conference. They're like, "I'm here because I saw in your newsletter that Second Nature was doing this thing." I'm like, "Oh, that's so cool! I love that."
and similarly, like I remember Peter when you reached out about getting started with Crane, and it was a very new thing, and Second Nature was making the decision to commit and support. So like we're very proud advisory partner members. I was talking to CEO at another company yesterday who was considering it, and just telling them
Hmm.
what a great experience that we've had. Because I think it's important that if we see these communities flourish and the missions of them flourish, right, we're going to see our industry flourish,
Yep.
and that's good. Like that's good for everybody, and we've seen it happen, and the power of it's real, and it's really cool to see the Crane members that are taking weeks off, taking a month off their business, and doing great things with that in a way they probably wouldn't have done that if they hadn't had the group around them influencing them to do it.
Yep.
I'm curious, like Peter, I mean, you guys are a couple, more than a year or two into this now, right? You're a few years in, I guess, to this. And, what are one or two of the biggest lessons that you feel like you've learned, or one of the most kind of like unexpected things that you're kind of seeing come out of the Crane community?
Yeah, we're just past 2 years into it now, and man, when Wolf and I first announced it, we had no idea if anyone would sign up for this. This is not a free Facebook group. This is a significant financial commitment, and it is also off platform. It's not in Slack. It's not in Facebook. It's in this thing called Circle. So you got to get the app on your phone. You got to save the website in your browser so that you come back to it. And so we were worried about, is anyone gonna like, I mean, we've all had the experience. You sign up for something, and you never return to it. Like you never log in again.
Yep.
You download some app, you never open it again. And I was really worried about that. And so thankfully, and surprisingly, frankly, the engagement inside that online community is off the charts. I mean, I track there's a stat that online communities use called monthly active users, MAU. And our MAU is 90%, which is, they don't even have that. When you look like what's a good MAU, like it doesn't even go that high.
Off the chart.
Yeah, it's crazy. So I love that members are seeing the value, that they're making the time to check in with the community on a regular basis. So that's been awesome. Um, I've also been really, I knew about the power of sort of real life connections because of NARPM. Crane takes that to a whole other level. We do Crane dinners around the country. We run events alongside NARPM conferences. We do an annual retreat, members only, which is like a 2 or 3 day kind of marquee experience for the year. And man, those in-person connections and relationships that are built is just, you can't even describe it. Online is awesome, but nothing beats real life. And so that's been extremely rewarding and fulfilling. I mean, we've got people who, exchange cell phone numbers, they found best friends, and I think my goal for anyone who's listening, what you really want to have in property management, regardless of where you are in your journey, is you want to have like 2 to 4 people in your cell phone that you can text 24/7 with a random property management question or problem or business owner freak out moment. Like, hey, my COO just quit. Like, I'm freaking out. What do I do? Or I just got a really weird letter from the IRS, something about 1099 information not matching. Like, has anyone gotten this before? Like, you want that little pack that you can rely on, and kind of like an iron sharpens iron thing. Crane helps build that for people through these online and offline connections. So that's been awesome. I love that part of it, which is it's a very different feeling than I got from running a property management business, where seeing a customer be successful in property management means they get a few extra dollars in their bank account every year than they would have before. That's awesome. And we're going to continue to strive for that. But success for a customer in Crane means they have a new best friend for life, or the value of their business doubled because of the fact that they are no longer integral to the operations, and they proved it by taking a month off. Like, that stuff gets me hyped to this day.
I love what you shared there. Peter, I guess like before we sign off, what's if people are thinking about this and saying, "Hey, I'm interested in learning more information," where would be the best place for them to go learn more about Crane?
Best place is our website, joincrane.co, and we couldn't quite get the .com. Unfortunately, it was crane.com is some other huge company, and even joincrane.com. So anyway, joincrane.co, and we only open up for new members twice a year. We try and keep the quality high, and we don't want to be in promotion marketing mode all the time. We want to be focused on the community and our members. And so we have an application window opening up here. It opens up at the end of September and runs through early October. So if it's that time, you can apply directly. If it's not that time, you can get on the waiting list and either join that group when it opens or the next one in the spring. There's a bunch of information there on the website, and love to see inside. There's an application process. Members are vetted by Wolfgang and I personally. Part of the value of the community, and we hear this both from members and Crane partners like Second Nature, is the caliber of the membership and the fact that it is a private, vetted community. That's what helps people feel comfortable sharing. I mean, we have people sharing P&Ls, we have them sharing, here's my lease, here's my PMA, here's my everything. And that's only possible in that kind of a closed environment. So we do, we are kind of keeping it that way.
I I love it when I get on my Circle app in Crane and see, and I'm like, oh wow. And I just see name after name of people, and I'm like, man, it's just impressive property managers from all over the country. And they're putting in really thoughtful, like it's very engaged. The 90% doesn't surprise me. It's like, man, if I could go to a gym where like 90% of people were showing up and they were like really committed and really serious and really sharing their goals, like I'm confident like my likelihood of success would be much higher, and I'd just be more motivated to show
Yeah.
up in a place like that. And I think it's really, really cool what you guys are doing, how intentional, you've been about it, and not just opening up far and wide to everybody, like staying really committed and thoughtful about how you're approaching really the change that you guys are trying to bring about in the industry. And it's great to see the progress against that.
Well, thanks. And Second Nature has been great partners. You were one of our founding partners, took a chance on us when we were smaller and pretty new, and you guys just renewed for another year. We really appreciate that. And all the partners that we work with are fantastic and offer special benefits for Crane members, and it's been a great thing.
Awesome. Well, Peter, I know we'll see you on the event circuit coming up here shortly. Thanks for taking the time today. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Andrew.